Despite the ongoing outbreak in China that many are now labeling the CCP virus, the Chinese Communist regime continues to persecute people who practice Falun Gong. Looking at the persecution cases between December 2019 and March 2020, we find at least 860 people who were arrested or sentenced for their practice of Falun Gong. After sentencing 193 Falun Gong practitioners in December 2019 and January 2020, the communist regime's court system slowed down amidst the lockdown and travel restrictions implemented across China. Yet despite that, twice as many Falun Gong practitioners were arrested in February 2020 compared to February of last year. And in March 2020, a total of 385 practitioners were arrested for their faith. Additionally, in February and March of this year, Chinese authorities actually transferred officers to Wuhan, the epicenter of the pandemic, to replace some of the prison officers there that had become infected. This demonstrates that even amid a pandemic, the Chinese regime has prioritized keeping prisoners of conscience under lock and key. Falun Gong, also known as Falun Dafa, is an ancient spiritual discipline in the Buddhist tradition. It includes gentle exercises and a sitting meditation. The core principles of Falun Gong are truthfulness, compassion, and tolerance. The practice has been brutally persecuted by the Chinese Communist Party since 1999. There are more than 4,000 cases of Falun Gong practitioners dying from abuse and torture while in police custody. Let's take a closer look at a few of the heartbreaking cases of people being persecuted for their faith over the last few months. In our first case, we look at a nightmare scenario that has decimated a Chinese family. After losing a husband and 2 sons to the Chinese Communist Party's persecution of Falun Gong, a woman watched a third and youngest son die on March 10, 2020. The mother of 4 from Hunan province had previously lost her husband in 2001 after his health failed while struggling for months to secure the release of his 2 sons, who were both arrested in Beijing for appealing for their right to practice Falun Gong. The oldest brother, Mr. Chen Yumin, died on April 26, 2011. He was tortured and injected with unknown drugs while serving a 5-year term in Xinmi prison for his faith. He was 48 years old when he died. The second brother, Mr. Chen Xiaomin, was arrested on June 7, 2016, and was released later on medical parole in 2018. As a result of the abuse in custody, he suffered multiple health issues and had completely lost the ability to take care of himself. He passed away on May 14, 2019. His lungs were completely decayed. The third and youngest brother, Mr. Chen Xiaomin, was arrested on June 6, 2016, and was released on January 18, 2020. Like so many other prisoners of conscience, he was in critical condition upon his release from prolonged abuse and torture while in custody. Emaciated and unable to eat, he never recovered and died on March 10, 2020. He was 51 years old. Our second case examines a 64-year-old woman who died suspiciously while in prison for practicing Falun Gong. When Ms. Xiao Yongfen's family visited her in Jilin Province Women's Prison in early January 2020, she was still in good spirits and didn't appear to be suffering from any serious health issues. But only a few weeks later, the Jilin Province resident, who had been serving time for her faith in Falun Gong, died suddenly while in custody. She was 64. Our third case looks at a woman who was arrested in March 2020 after previously undergoing severe torture for her faith. After watching her younger sister die following years of abuse by police and herself having barely survived a decade of torture, a 49-year-old woman in Shulan City, Jilin Province, was recently arrested again for not giving up her faith in Falun Gong. Officers knocked on Miss Song Yuchun's door on March 26, 2020, pretending to be conducting a census. They deceived Miss Song into opening the door. The officers told Miss Song that her letter to Li Keqiang, the Chinese Communist Party premier, in which she demanded that the CCP stop persecuting Falun Gong, had been returned by authorities to Beijing, and that the National Appeals Office had ordered them to arrest Miss Song. Miss Song says she told the police, "I'm just seeking justice for my faith. I didn't do anything wrong, yet I was almost tortured to death in prison. I'm still suffering many health problems now, and I can't live normally. What's wrong in my writing to the premier? They arrested her later that evening, and we believe she still remains in police custody. Miss Song was first arrested in 2003 when she was sentenced to 12 years in prison for her faith. In prison, Miss Song says she was constantly tortured, including savage beatings and extreme stretching, as well as being injected with toxic drugs. When she was released on bail in 2014, she was in serious condition, and she had been reduced to skin and bones. The cases above only represent a small number of practitioners who have been persecuted for their faith in Falun Gong for the past 21 years in China. You can help them by being the voice for the voiceless and sharing this video with your friends and family, or by signing a petition to end this persecution at FalunInfo.net.